Welcome to Next Radio with Broadcast Bionics, innovative solutions for creative people.
So we're in the magic circle. Who'd like to see a magic trick? Yeah. A magic trick. I'm going to need an assistant for this. Oh. And here we go. This is so I'd like to welcome Herman, who is my pet 7-foot inflatable elephant. It's the most exciting thing I've ever bought on expenses. If you ever want to buy one, just go to Google, put in massive inflatable elephant, 240 quid. So there you go. So Herman has been helping me with a big project, a roadshow that I've been delivering around the agency and the media world for the last 6 months. Here are some pictures of us with him inflated in various agencies. And in various sort of deflated. It's amazing. I've done about 30, 40 of these presentations, how mundane it becomes putting away an inflatable elephant at the end of a presentation. Jeff Lloyd, you can possibly just make out there jumping and helping deflate. He goes up in 7 minutes. He goes down in 5.5. So I know him well. Why is Herman part of my life? I often ask myself, and I'm going to explain to you now. It's because of the change to the Ofcom regulations came through in the last broadcast code at December last year, and the gift that Ofcom gave us commercially for those of us working in branded content in radio. It's just a fantastic opportunity. And I'm going to remind you of where the regulations used to be for many years and what we had to operate under. So 20th of December is when the regulations came in, and the freedom that we are now allowed is substantial. We never used to be allowed to, technically, if you look in the old code, to promote a product or service, which seems ridiculous. We all have promotions departments in our commercial radio stations, and yet in black and white it said you can't promote a product or a service. We weren't allowed to give a brand that we were working with too much prominence in terms of what we were doing. Presenters weren't allowed to talk about personally how they felt about a brand that they might be working with. So we might be paid to deliver a promotion, for example, about a film. They weren't allowed to talk about whether they liked it or not, or any of their own personal recommendation. And you think about what radio is really great at, that trust, the relationship, the closeness with its listeners, the influence that a presenter can have with its audience, and yet the very Ofcom regulations weren't allowing radio to behave in the way that it's meant to be. And yet all of that changed, which is really exciting. And we had to deliver commercially pretty much like this. We had to, we could have a brand in a show, but we had to have clear separation between us. And it was like having twin beds, really, with Ofcom looking around the corner and the door just checking that we weren't hopping in each other's beds. And when they were there, and then when they disappeared, we'd sort of look at each other and turn out the light occasionally and hopefully do some great stuff with them. Actually, the reason for the elephant is the brands were the elephant in the room. So everybody knew that a brand was in the show, but we weren't allowed to engage with it. We weren't allowed to interact with it. We weren't allowed to integrate it into the content. So everyone knew the elephant was there. No one was allowed to talk about it. And the Ofcom change really has massively turned that round. Now, actually, the only restriction really we've got is not a restriction. It's about we've got to be transparent. So whereas previously I wasn't even allowed to say that there's an elephant there. Now, being transparent, I can tell the world, in fact, I'm told that I need to tell the world that I'm sleeping with the elephant, which is quite an exciting thing. So I'm going to give you my top 5 opportunities. If you work in commercial radio, commercially, hopefully you're already doing this. If not, you might feed back to your commercial teams as well. But things that I've learned along the way taking Herman out on this roadshow. First thing I would say is, do you understand the opportunities yourself? Do you commercially know where you stand yourself? Here are a number of things that we've done which are dramatically different. In fact, actually, the morning of the 20th of December, one of the first things we were able to do, we were doing a promotion talking about the National Lottery Christmas Eve Millionaires. We could tell listeners that they might want to buy a ticket. We previously we could highlight that the competition was running, but we weren't allowed to tell people to buy something, which seems ridiculous. Now we can with our new freedom. We went to New York thanks to Sky Atlantic, and we could talk about the channel. We could talk about the shows that were coming up. Previously, that would have been seen as undue prominence. Technically, technically, we wouldn't have even be allowed to be out there because we've been paid to do that. We've been working with Swiftcover for about 2.5 years now, and this is the first time we've been able to acknowledge their involvement with Iggy Pop, because that actually would have been us talking about them as a brand, which we wouldn't have been able to do. RAC have sponsored our traffic recently. We created some editorial programming and featured the voice of an RAC patrolman talking about winter driving tips. And I believe that's more credible content to hear someone who is used to changing tyres on the lay-by or fixing an engine than Russ Williams, bless him, who is fantastic, who I don't think has ever changed a tyre in his life. Just access to some fantastic content. We've also pushed it too far, I think. We did something earlier this year, which was fantastic. We'd never have been allowed to do it. We took the whole breakfast show to the Soccer AM studio with Sky and delivered a show from there. And actually, there was a moment where we lost Absolute Radio in the content, I think, and we got some feedback from listeners that they weren't sure if they tuned in to a Sky show, and we sort of pulled back from that. So great delivery for Sky, but we've learnt massive lessons about how we could bring brands into content. So the first thing I'd say is, how far have you pushed, or are you aware that you can push this? Because the opportunity that clients can give is some really exciting, unique content and some amazing revenues. They can actually fund stuff that you never have been able to do before and create new ways of engaging with listeners. This revenue often never maybe existed before, or it's come from another medium, or it's discretionary to you, and you're the only person, you're the only station who's got it. And making the most of these changes allows access to that. And also just the ability to deliver great work. I think it's fantastic that the Sony Awards recently, from last year, started to add best branded content element to it as well, to recognise that branded content, when done well, actually has editorial value for listeners as well. Second area is on my travels, as I said, 30, 40 presentations that I've done to many people. And I always ask the audience, are you aware of the changes that have happened? And I've made these figures up. But it is pretty much, as you see, most of the room just sort of shrugs and goes, sort of, maybe, just start from scratch. And everywhere I've been, I've had to start from scratch to tell people what's happening. And again, I would urge you, if you're working with commercial teams or you're part of one yourself, to get the message out there. They don't understand how exciting the opportunity is and what they can do. At the end of the presentations, they ask questions, and they want to see how their brands can integrate with content. But beforehand, it's not even on a lot of their radars to do this. TV has an opportunity to give TV a run for its money and teach it a few things as well. Product placement starts, first of all, with this P. Clearly, it's not as big as that on the screen on TV. It doesn't, which I actually find a bit weird, that it can flag up that someone might have paid to be in a show, but it won't tell you who it is. So it's a bit sinister. This is a screenshot of the first piece of product placement that ever happened in This Morning. And it's actually Nestle paid for the coffee machine in the background, 100 grand for 3 months. And most people think it's the bottle of Worcester sauce at the front, and who paid nothing. And now, you can wrap around it. Product placement for TV is a great move forward. But TV does not have the freedom at the moment that radio has, and radio needs to take advantage of the lead that it's got. In fact, a number of people have said, radio, you've got that product placement thing, haven't you? Like TV. No, we don't. We have the freedom. In fact, where TV's regulations were relaxed, actually they now have the same restrictions that we've just left. Also, creative quality of advertising isn't always the best, as we will know. And I think the new freedom that we're allowed with Ofcom gives you a chance to create branded content where you control the message and the delivery of it. And actually, it's a chance for you to re-establish the comfort zones that you have, what you're comfortable doing, your interpretation of the code, and being able to share that publicly with your agencies and clients. And on the creative challenge, actually, the RAP are doing some fantastic work. There's some stuff that's coming over the next few months with that as well. And then finally, next year is just so exciting. Excuse me. Next year is so really exciting for all the reasons of the big events that we've got. There's some really feel-good things that are happening. There are the big sporting events where brands actually have got to spend money to activate and amplify their bigger sponsorships and partnerships. And many of these events next year are actually badging exercises. And what radio's now able to do, because we can bring the brand into the heart of the content, is tell the stories of why those brands are involved in those events in the first place. So not just sponsored by, our friends at, etc. Why does McDonald's get involved in the Olympics? How can they explain the link there? Why is BMW involved in it? Why is Coke too? And radio's fantastic, as we all know in this room, for telling stories. So there you go. The elephant has vanished. Magic has appeared on this stage. We can talk about it. We can acknowledge it. So make money from what you can do. Tell the world what you can now do. Beat TV while it's possible for that to happen. Take control of the creative and the quality of the content, and get planning for next year. Thank you very much.